welcome to my channel. I'm Jess, mama for Holistic Nutritionist and Nutritional Chef. I love sharing healthy ideas, and so I really wanted to help all you mamas out there learn the easiest way to get your kids to love veggies. Of course, starting them young is ideal, but there's also ways to get older kids to love veggies too. In this series, I'm going to start off telling you all the tips for babies. And then I'm also going to include a video on baby-led weaning, a video on different recipes that you can give to your kids, as well as stuff you can do for those older kids who are just so darn picky that all you want to do is shovel something in their mouth and you don't really care what it is. Thanks for sticking around. Remember to subscribe so you can see those upcoming videos, and stay tuned for more. Is that good? Before we get too far into it, I just want to say that yes, I'm a nutritionist. I've actually had my master's in holistic nutrition since 2010. I had to think about that for a moment. But by no way am I your nutritionist or am I your baby's nutritionist. So always make sure that you talk to your pediatrician before taking any medical advice or any kind of nutritional advice for that matter, because they're the ones who know your baby. You're the one who knows your baby. This is just my experience as a mama for, as well as bits and pieces of the knowledge that I've gained over the years working with different clients. But again, just trust your gut, trust your pediatrician, and let's go from there. So to get started, I just want to give you a little bit of background on babies. We all have heard that you want to feed babies around 6 months or so. Some people say 4 to 6 months is when you can start feeding solids. But you have to think of a baby's overall health and how a baby is growing and developing. The digestive system is one of the last things to develop in a baby, and is why babies that are born premature sometimes can't drink milk because they don't have the sucking, refluxing, but it's all connected. Your throat, your esophagus, your digestive system, stomach, intestines, all of that is one big large system, and it has to develop and grow properly before you use it properly. So it takes months for that to fully develop, and is why you wouldn't give a newborn baby chunky food, why you wouldn't give a newborn baby certain kinds of formulas or whatever it may be. It's why premature babies can't have to have a premature formula, because their digestive system isn't developed. And so when you think about starting to feed them solids when they've had milk their entire lives, you can't just start shoving stuff down their throat that isn't easily digestible. So you want to think about the age and stage of your baby. Along with the digestive system, the gut bacteria is also essential for babies to start being able to break down and absorb the nutrients that are found in solid food. So this too needs to be developed well enough until you can start giving your baby solids. So that's another thing to think about. A baby that's born premature may not be able to start solids right at 6 months. My son, for example, my youngest, was born at 37 weeks. And so at 6 months, I tried to kind of introduce some stuff, and he did not like it at all. So I kind of would just give him a little spoonful and kind of let him feel the texture a little bit until closer to 7 months. He really started being able to formulate it in his mouth, kind of move it around, and then eventually swallow it. And once you realize that all these things are in place and you start feeding your baby solids, you want to think about the overall outcome of what this is doing. Yes, they're going to start eating nourishing foods and start eating solids and eventually wean away from breast milk after the first year, of course. But you also want to think that these first 3 years are absolutely crucial in a baby's taste buds developing into what they're going to become as an adult. Yes, our taste buds change over time. Everyone's taste buds change over time, and you can learn to love a food. However, if you teach a baby from a very young age that food is nourishing and that stuff like vegetables and stuff with a little more bitter, not such a sweet taste actually is what they know and is how they develop what they enjoy eating when they're young, the chances that they're going to be great non-picky eaters when they're toddlers into childhood and even adulthood is so much higher. For the babies who have always had fruit purees mixed with sugars or just sweet foods in general, for those that don't have that sophisticated palate, those are the ones who are picky. So that's why it's so crucial to start young, feeding children foods that are healthy and that nourish their bodies, one, to help them grow and to just thrive on life, but also so that they can enjoy the foods that are actually good for them. So when they grow up, they're gonna enjoy foods that are actually good for them. So before we go into this any further, I wanna let you guys know that I have created a whole routine to help you guys feed your babies the best. This routine is all about the best foods to feed your baby, easy, convenient. I actually have multiple plans for different ages and stages, but this first one is just a highlight of what you can get. It's on Routiner. So if you aren't familiar with Routiner, it's basically a routine that automatically fills into your calendar, gives you the times, the ingredients, all the things you need to know about those certain recipes, how to feed your baby the best throughout the week. So make sure to check that out in the comments below, as well as the link above. And you guys are well on your way to feeding your baby the best. So with all that said, I am a foodie. I absolutely love food. You can see my recipes, you can see my posts about food, and food is a big part of everyday life for everybody. Me, yes, of course, because I love cooking and that. But even if you don't love cooking, for holidays, for birthdays, everything is centered around food. And our babies see us eating food all the time, which is why you want to be a good example for them, but you want to introduce those good foods for them. So with that being said, the first thing that you want to think about when introducing food to a baby is the texture of the food. So babies, all they know is breast milk. All they know is something smooth, easily gliding down their throat. They don't know the chunkiness, they don't know the different textures and tastes of all these other foods. So that's why it's so important to remember that when you're first learning to feed a baby, when you're first starting on any sort of solids, whether it's purees or little chunks of food as a baby-led weaning, you need to realize that it's the texture for them. So the very first time you're so excited to feed your baby food, you give them that first bite and they just make that face. It's okay. Don't get your feelings hurt. That is completely normal. That can last for several tries, if not even days or weeks of trying to introduce this new food because they're not used to the texture. So just be careful when you're first giving the baby food that the texture is smoother. We will talk about baby-led weaning and how that kind of all fits in and my philosophies as well as just what it means in general in an upcoming video. So make sure you subscribe so you can watch that one. But in the meantime, just remember that textures are very important for babies and that is just the mouthfeel of the food in the very, very beginning. Tip number 2 you want to think about is always feed baby when they are awake and they are happy. So you want food to be a good experience, especially when it comes to introducing solids for the first time. I know you as a parent are really excited, but babies are excited too. They've been seeing you eat the solid food forever. As long as their little lives have been, and they're curious to what you're eating. So you don't want to start feeding a baby when they're tired. You also don't want to feed a baby if they're not that hungry. So what I like to do is after my baby has had a great nap and they seem alert and awake and happy, that's when I sit them down in the chair and begin introducing new foods to them. So if my baby's cranky or tired or I just fed him breast milk not too long before, they're not going to be that interested in the food that you have to give them. When they're alert and happy, this is when you can start giving them food, and the chances that they are gonna like it or at least interact with the food more is much more likely. Tip number 3 to introducing your baby to new foods is start with one food at a time. I know I said I'm a foodie and I like to make elaborate meals and all this kind of stuff, but for a baby who knows nothing else, you really want to start with one food at a time and help them develop the taste for that food. Whether it be sweet potatoes or green peas or carrots or butternut squash, all of those things, just stick with that one food for a good 3 days or so until they start developing the taste for the food, and then you can do something else. Because for us adults, it takes about 10 tries or so for us to develop a taste for new food. Same with a baby. It takes time. It's not something that they're gonna like right away or hate right away necessarily. You know, sometimes they can just be indifferent towards a food, but sometimes they can seem absolutely disgusted by the food. And so you think, oh, my baby just doesn't like this food, let's try something different. No, please do not give up on a food, especially something that is really nutritious, like sweet potatoes or avocados, because that first time that you try it, it's the texture again, it's the taste of the food, it's the smell of the food, it's something new. And babies are used to the same thing. Babies like routines, they like their mommy's milk or formula, whatever it is that you feed your baby. So just make sure that you stick with it and introduce those foods one at a time and give it a chance. And once they start developing the like for the food, or even say you try it a couple days in a row and like multiple times a day, they just don't like the food, okay, you can move on. What you can do is mix it with a food that the baby already likes, and that will help. So it'll kind of mask it. So another tip besides mixing different foods to get the baby to like the taste of a food that they're not used to yet is mixing some breast milk in. So babies like this sweet, nourishing taste. I mean, it's comfort food for a baby. So if you mix some breast milk in with the sweet potato puree or the peas or the broccoli, whatever it is, the chances that they are going to like the food is much higher because they already know the taste. Yes, at first they may be a little thrown off and be like, oh, what happened to my milk? But after a while, they're like, oh, I recognize this flavor and I like this flavor, so this one must be good too. So that's a little hint and a little tip there that you can use to help with that. You also want to make sure to enable your child to like veggies is introduce them early, often, and only veggies. So I know a lot of times you'll hear, oh, I gave my babies applesauce, or I gave them some peaches or this or that, which is fine and great. But when you're first starting out, veggies, the ones that are a little bit more bitter, they're not as used to, it's really good to introduce those at least as often as possible. So yes, you can mix in a little bit of banana. My kids absolutely love bananas. It's an easy food, especially when you start the baby-led weaning. You can cut them up, they can pick them up, blah, blah, blah. But it should not be the only food that you feed your babies, because again, the greens, the ones that are really nutrient dense, but also really good for them, filled with the antioxidants and the vitamins and the phytonutrients, all those things that really help us develop into our best selves, babies need too. So help them develop the taste for those veggies, and maybe even with your fruit, add a little veggie in. Like you could do a little spinach and apple or kale and strawberry, mix a little of it together, and that helps develop their taste. So yes, they get the sweet, they get the taste of those other foods and fruits, but then they're still getting the veggies. Finally, I want to talk about eating organic foods. We all hear that eating organic is best and we should all buy organic. And I'm fully on board with buying organic food. But I want to say that really look at the dirty dozen. If you can't afford or you just can't find certain foods that are organic, that's okay. But when it comes to the dirty dozen, those are the ones, especially when you feed such a little human being, really do need to be free of the chemicals and pesticides and sprays and all of that stuff that you can find. So the list changes year to year. So I'm not going to list all of the foods on the dirty dozen because depending on when you watch this, they may or may not be. But some of the foods that are pretty much always there, apples, strawberries, any kind of berries, anything with a really thin skin or something that you may eat the skin of, just think of that as buying clean. There are foods that are on the Clean 15 that aren't really sprayed with pesticides because bugs don't tend to get attracted to those foods as much for whatever reason. And so there's not the use and need of the pesticides on those, and therefore they're better. Like bananas, you don't have to buy organic. Avocados, you don't need to buy organic. Anything with that skin that you're going to peel off, especially if it's a thicker skin, watermelon, cantaloupe, anything like that, you don't need to spend the money or use the time trying to look for something that is organic in that realm. But for the stuff that is thinner, you really should. I mean, sweet potatoes, I try to always buy organic. Even white potatoes, buy organic. Anything that's GMO or potential for GMOs like corn, tofu, we can go on. That's a whole other topic. But anyhow, you just want to give your baby the best. You have to think that the concentration of a food into a baby is so much higher because the baby's so small. Their stomachs are so small. When a baby first starts eating milk, they just get like a teaspoon or two when they're born. And then it goes up to a tablespoon, and then a fourth of a cup, half of a cup, full cup, 5 to 8 ounces at a time, 5 times a day. So it really does expand. Their bellies expand. But you just want to remember that their stomachs still are pretty small. So they can't take in a lot of food at once. So that's the other thing. Don't be alarmed if your baby's not eating a ton because they're just learning. They're trying to experience what eating solids is all about. But it's not that important for you to fill up their gut that first year with food just because they still get breast milk, as I said, to about a year. We will go into all the details of baby-led weaning and what our babies need and the amounts that our babies need going in that first year in the future videos. So subscribe and keep watching for those tips. But for now, just remember these top 7 clues and tips and ideas when you first start feeding your baby, because we want to start our babies off with the absolute best chance of living a healthy and fulfilled life as possible. So with just some simple ideas, you really can get that going. So again, thank you so much for watching. I so appreciate you guys. Remember to keep watching for my future videos. Subscribe, like, comment. I so appreciate it. I love you all, and we will be together again soon.